Steelers fans, it is said that time is a flat circle, essentially meaning we see the same storylines over and over and over again, and whether it's history, whether it's football, we tend to see a lot of the same things happen time and time and time again in the history of things. And the Pittsburgh Steelers here in 2025, I believe, could be repeating NFL history. They could be following in the footsteps of two very specific NFL champion football teams here over the last half decade that have kind of paved the way for this year's Pittsburgh Steelers team to have the kind of success that we've been seeing them have over the last 3 weeks on their current win streak and hopefully extending all the way into the NFL postseason. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon to celebrate Pittsburgh's 3-game win streak we are currently enjoying here in the Steel City. Hopefully they can keep it going, and hopefully they can keep it going into the postseason. So greatly appreciate your guys' support. Now first, before I reveal who the two teams that we're going to be talking about and comparing to the Steelers are, let's break down the 2025 Steelers and kind of what the breakdown of this team looks like. They've got a new, older veteran at quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. They've gotten a very experienced roster with guys like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, and they've brought new guys and new veterans in like DK Metcalf and Jalen Ramsey and all these guys. Then they got out to a fast start this year, 4-1 start, all right? Then they get out to a little bit of a mid-season lull. They lost 5 of 7 in the middle of the season. Then they're getting hot late. They've won 3 of their last 3 ball games here, and they're starting to get hot, and now they've put themselves in position to win the AFC North Championship and get a home playoff game here in 2025. Now, which teams over the last half decade or so, or over the last decade, have been similar to what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing right now? And for me, guys, the two teams that I want to talk about today and compare to this year's Pittsburgh Steelers teams are Super Bowl champions, the 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady, and the 2021 Los Angeles Rams, led by Matthew Stafford. All right? And, before I go into the breakdowns on these teams, I just want to say up front, I'm not saying the Pittsburgh Steelers are for sure going to win the Super Bowl. I just want to look at some of the comparisons that the Steelers definitely have with these two ball clubs in the seasons where they won Super Bowls. So we'll start with the 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, all right? The same exact stuff that we just talked about with the Steelers, you can apply to that Buccaneers football team, all right? They had a new, older veteran quarterback in his first season with the team, Tom Brady's first season in Tampa, all right? They also had a very experienced veteran roster with guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Levante David, Jamel Dean, Carlton David, all these guys that they had, Vita Vea, they had a bunch of veterans that were already established on that football team. And then Tom Brady comes in with his experience and his arm talent and his football IQ. He gets the most out of that group. And guess what? They also got out to a fast start, a 6-2 start. Then they also had a midseason lull where they lost 3 of 4 ball games, and then they got hot late, winning 4 straight in the regular season, and then they capped it off with 4 straight wins, of course, in the postseason to be named Super Bowl champions over Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in their home stadium back in 2020. Then we can look at the Los Angeles Rams in 2021. It's the same thing. They traded 2 first-round picks and their current starting quarterback, Jared Goff, for Matthew Stafford, a new, older veteran quarterback with great arm talent and great football IQ. Sound familiar, Steelers fans? And they also had a very experienced veteran roster, and they famously went all in on that season. They had Aaron Donald, but they also brought in guys like Von Miller and OBJ, and they had Cooper Kupp, and all these guys that they had on the roster that year was a very veteran roster. Andrew Whitworth was on that football team, right? They also got out to a fast start, 7-1 start. So that's the best start we've talked about so far. But then they lost 3 straight games in the middle of their season, and then they also got hot late, winning 5 of their final 6, and then, of course, winning 4 straight in the postseason, including beating Tom Brady and the Bucs on their way to their Super Bowl championship. And for me, guys, I think that there are 3 things that connect these teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers this year, the 2021 Los Angeles Rams, and the 2020 Buccaneers. I think there are 3 things that connect these teams. And coming up here on Steelers Talk, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that link these football teams and why the Steelers could be the next in line of these types of football teams that go out and get a new, older, experienced starting quarterback and end up winning a Super Bowl in their first season with that team. But before we get into what those connections are, what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Well, is there a less than 0% chance that the Pittsburgh Steelers win the Super Bowl this year? All right, so less than, or is there less than, or is there more than a 0% chance that Pittsburgh wins the Super Bowl this year? Yes or no? F Ponzi there in the chat. I might have scripted that one wrong there, but is there a more than 0% chance that the Pittsburgh Steelers win a Super Bowl this year? Yes means you think there's at least a small chance the Steelers could win it this year, or no, meaning there is absolutely no chance the Pittsburgh Steelers can win the Super Bowl here in 2025. But before we get into the rest of today's show, guys, I want to give you guys a word from our sponsor today at PrizePicks, and it is officially the holiday season. And in my opinion, guys, this is the best time of the year for watching sports, whether it's bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening all at once, and while all that action is going on, there is one place where it feels so good to be right, and that is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is super simple to play. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about PrizePicks is that how you play is up to you. If you want a little bit more flexibility, you can choose the flex play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you're feeling really strong about a particular lineup and want a bigger payout, you can go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test, make some money. That is, if you know ball. And for Saturday night's matchup between the Ravens and Packers, I'm going to take the more on Brandon McManus PATs made, the more on rushing yards for Derrick Henry, and we're going to take an anytime field goal made for Tyler Loop, the Ravens kicker. So download the PrizePicks app for me today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So the first major link between the 2025 Steelers, the 2021 Rams, and the 2020 Buccaneers is that they all added an experienced veteran QB that is a future Hall of Famer. All right, you guys can obviously look at the quarterbacks in question here. Aaron Rodgers joining the Steelers, Tom Brady joining the Buccaneers, and of course Matthew Stafford joining the Los Angeles Rams in those respective seasons. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of things that experienced quarterbacks bring to the table to a new football team that has certainly helped the Steelers this year, and I think helped the Bucs and the Rams in their respective seasons, and has allowed these teams to in the Steelers' case, potentially compete for a Super Bowl, but obviously in Tampa and LA's case, they ended up winning a Super Bowl. It's because you're adding somebody with high-level football IQ so they can get in and out of the right plays. They can operate the offense. They can audible into the right things based on what they're seeing pre-snap. Also, high-level arm talent. Now, Tom Brady was never known for insane arm talent, but he obviously had a very good arm. And then Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford are known for sidearm passes and all these crazy things that they can do with their arms, no-look passes, that type of stuff. Also, they all have high-level pocket presence. Tom Brady would get the ball out extremely quickly, just like Aaron Rodgers. Matthew Stafford's known for his pocket presence as well, and Rodgers might have some of the best pocket presence in NFL history. Also, because these guys have a long track record of success, they can bring a high level of leadership to the group because everyone is looking to them as the leader of the team. There's no question who the leader of the unit is out there. Also, because they've been in big games before, the clutch factor in the fourth quarter is very real. Matthew Stafford had that game-winning drive in the Super Bowl against the Bengals. Tom Brady had a number of game-winning drives that season for Tampa Bay. He beat Aaron Rodgers in the NFC Championship game in Lambeau, if you'll remember. And then Aaron Rodgers, of course, can certainly deliver some big-time passes in the fourth quarter. And then they also have extensive post-game experience. Experience in the playoffs matters, guys. It really does, because these younger quarterbacks that go in there, they've never been on a stage that big. The do-or-die nature of NFL postseason, you got to experience it at least a couple times usually before you can have a high level of success. And, Rodgers, Brady, and Stafford all have very extensive playoff histories, and they're not afraid of that big moment when it arrives. But the second major link between these three teams is that they've got that experienced veteran supporting cast around the quarterback, because it's more than just the QB, right? If you got an experienced quarterback, but you got a really young supporting cast, usually those teams don't win Super Bowls, all right? Experience matters in every position out there, and you gotta have other players at other positions positions clutch up in those big moments. Obviously, the quarterback is the most important position on the field, and you really want to make sure your quarterback is capable of delivering in those big moments, but you also need the players around them to be able to deliver in those big moments as well. And teams with more experience tend to have a little bit more success when they get to the postseason. Then the third major link is, yes, they all have Super Bowl level head coaches. And I know that, a lot of the people that want Mike Tomlin fired are probably going to object to me, calling him a Super Bowl level coach. But yes, I do believe Mike Tomlin is a good head coach. And I think, he's certainly in the same conversation as Bruce Arians as a head coach, who I hold in high regard. I'm a big fan of Bruce Arians. No risk it, no biscuit, that old stuff. I'm so glad he was able to win a Super Bowl before he ended up retiring. And then Sean McVay, with the Rams team in question that we're talking about today, is the only head coach in NFL history to win a Super Bowl that was younger than Mike Tomlin when he won his at 36 years old. All right, so Tomlin and McVay are the two head coaches, the two youngest head coaches in NFL history to win Super Bowls. Both of them were 36 years old when they won their respective titles. And yes, Mike Tomlin is a really good head coach. Now, you can make arguments that maybe he's not an elite head coach or that he's a top 5 head coach, but you simply can't go 19 consecutive seasons in the National Football League without a losing season and be a bad head coach. All right, you can't win a Super Bowl in this league while being a bad head coach. All right, you have to at least be a competent head coach to be able to get to that one Super Bowl championship, in my opinion. And Tomlin has certainly had his flaws throughout his career. He still has his flaws, all right? Like, he's not the best game manager in the world, all right? He's not the best with challenges, all right? There's certain things that Tomlin is not perfect with in his profile, and I would say his biggest flaw and the biggest criticism you can lay at his feet, especially in previous seasons, is that he's had a really tough time building the proper roster and staff capable of competing in the postseason, especially since Big Ben started to wane towards the latter time of his career, and ever since the end of the Killer Bee era, man. He's had a really tough time, building this roster up, finding the right quarterback. He's had a couple misses at quarterback. He's had more than his fair share of misses at offensive coordinator. We know this as Steelers fans. But I believe this year's roster with Aaron Rodgers, all right, and bringing in Jalen Ramsey, bringing in DK Metcalf, still having TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig and Cam Hayward and all these guys, I think it's the best roster, and I think it's the best coaching staff. I know a lot of people don't like Terrell Austin, but he's really found a little bit of a groove here in the second half of the season. I think it's the best roster and the best coaching staff that Mike Tomlin has had since the Killer Bee era, and I think that that's going to allow the Pittsburgh Steelers this year to be competitive when we get into the postseason. But I can hear the Tomlin haters at home screaming at me right now, but Jack, Tomlin only won the Super Bowl because it was quote-unquote Bill Cowher's team, and he inherited Big Ben Roethlisberger and Troy Polamalu and all these guys and James Harrison and all these people. And that's true, all right? Like, a lot of these players that Tomlin did have on his roster were drafted in the Bill Cowher era. But remember, in 2006, Cowher's final season here in Pittsburgh, the team went 8-8, and they missed the playoffs, all right? So it was a very mediocre season with those same exact players. Then immediately, when Mike Tomlin comes in 2007, they immediately kick off the Tomlin era with a double-digit win season, and they make the playoffs, all right? And then in his second season, they up the ante. They get even better, and they get to 12-4, and they win the Super Bowl. So he took a team that was 8-8, not a playoff team, and in 2 seasons won a Super Bowl with those same players, all right? Now, was he fortunate to get, a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger from the jump? Absolutely. Tomlin himself would tell you that. But also the players in that locker room that won that Super Bowl with Mike Tomlin would tell you that was Mike Tomlin's team. He was the leader in the locker room. He was the one that was galvanizing the group, and he was the one that led the ship. It wasn't, Tomlin. The incompetent Tomlin came into a great team, and, the great players overcame a bad coach. Like, if you listen to the greats, you listen to Bill Belichick, who says good players can't overcome bad coaching. All right? Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl with some really good players that he inherited, but he coached those players to play at their highest potential. All right, and he deserves credit for that, and I absolutely count that as a valid Super Bowl championship. and a valid Super Bowl ring on the finger of head coach Mike Tomlin. And my take on Tomlin, guys, is that this is probably the best roster Tomlin has had in quite a while, probably since around 2017 or so. And this might be the roster that he's been waiting for to get him back into legitimate playoff contention, because he's gotten some teams that didn't even belong in the playoffs into the playoffs, and then he gets killed for losing in the playoffs with Mason Rudolph at quarterback and Russell Wilson at quarterback with T.J. Watt injured and all this stuff. But it's they weren't expected to win those football games. Now Tomlin deserves some credit for not building those rosters up enough to get them into Super Bowl contention, but I think this year's a bit different. Aaron Rodgers has the offense operating at the highest level we've seen in years. This defense is starting to turn a corner here late, and that's without T.J. Watt and Nick Herbig in the lineup, all right? They're doing a lot of stuff that I really like on both sides of the ball. I like what both coordinators are doing right now towards the end of the season. I think that this is the best roster that Tomlin has formulated, maybe in the last, for sure the last half decade, but probably since the Killer Bee era, and I think that this team is going to have a chance to have playoff success this year. Now, I want to make abundantly clear, once again, I am not saying in this video that the Steelers are for sure going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that they're for sure going to repeat the title, success that we saw from the Rams and the Buccaneers, all right? I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that this year's Steelers team has a lot of similarities to those teams, and, we've seen this model before have success in the playoffs, and we've seen teams in this kind of mold that the Pittsburgh Steelers are in have Super Bowl winning seasons, all right? So to sit here and say as a Steelers fan that I have no hope, there's no way they're going to win a playoff game. There's no chance they could make a run in the playoffs, especially in a wide open AFC. I just don't understand that thinking, because this team is playing its best football down the stretch, and I believe that this is the most complete roster and the best that this team has looked, in totality in quite some time. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will the Steelers win a playoff game this year? Type W if you think they get that elusive playoff win, or type N if you think they get no wins in the playoffs in the drought under head coach Mike Tomlin in the postseason continues. That'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for stopping by here today. Let me know what you guys think about my take here comparing the 2025 Steelers to the 2021 Rams and 2020 Buccaneers. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.